Today we have a special speaker series during Cybersecurity Month. Our special topic, as Chris said, Demystifying the Dark Web. So the collection of onion sites, sometimes called the dark web, is often portrayed as a vast and mysterious part of the internet. But this session will give you a ride onto how the dark web functions, how users interact. So please join us. Please ask questions. We really want this to be interactive. And today, our amazing speaker is a close friend and colleague of mine, Johnny Xmas. He's a predominant personality in the information security community, most well known for his work on the TSA master key leaks, his co-founding of the BurbSec community meetup, and his nearly 20-year tenure as a global information security researcher and speaker. See, I picked the good ones. Currently working with the security firm Grim to train the next generation of critical infrastructure incident responders. Johnny has held nearly every role there has been in the industry. His infamous mixture of humor, raw sincerity, and honest love of people led to his humorously candid discussions on every topic. Has said, let's make this interactive, and over to you, Johnny. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Rico. It almost sounds like that was pre-written for you. Very cool. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'll jump right into our presentation here since we do have a lot to cover here. The dark web is gargantuan. There is not enough time in an entire day to cover all of it, but I'm going to get you guys well on your way to having a way better understanding and of what it is and how to access it. Got a little bit of intro about me here. My name is Johnny Xmas. It's a family name. Don't worry about it. I'm currently a senior security researcher and a senior trainer at the information security engineering firm Grim. You can find us at grim.rip, cool domain name. We predominantly focus on government contracts, but this winter, we're really going to be branching out, doing a hard push to get into the private sector. So don't be surprised if you start seeing our name everywhere. We do a lot of big work and difficult work. One of my favorite things about working here is we don't take on any projects that we already know how we're going to do beginning to end. Everything we take on is something difficult. It's often something that other firms have failed to do for a client, and we agree to take on, and we always knock it out of the park because we have some absolute geniuses working here. We handle everything in IT and OT. We do a lot of operational technology, security assessment, and training. We're one of the few operational technology security trainers in the US. I'm part of that team, and I'm really proud to be part of that team. As Rico mentioned, I've done everything else. You can see it all here. I'm not going to read slides to you because that's why they're slides. You guys can read them yourselves. But I do have a link to our website here. You can check us out at grim.rip. Hit us up if you have some difficult security problems that need to be solved, from assessment to training to actual engineering. We do perform engineering. So one of my favorite things about doing assessments is we say, hey, your application has these problems. Also, we can fix that for you real quick, or we have, just as an example, and you're free to use that. You really don't get that out of pretty much any other assessment firm. That aside, I do have my GitHub here. That is where I keep all of my slide decks, among other little projects that I work on. So if you're looking for my slide decks, you can find it there. I also have my link tree down here, linktree/Johnny Xmas. You can find lots of stuff that I do on there, including a direct link to my slide deck. So either one of those will get you there if you're looking for this deck here. This deck actually is already up there. So let's dive in. This is, like I said, a very nutrient-dense talk, so forgive me if I'm talking a little fast. Definitely write your questions down for later. Today we're going to talk about something that's been called 1,000 names by 1,000 media outlets, the dark web. Looking at this list, scrolling here, it's easy to think that many of these names are just perhaps someone misspeaking or some concurrently generated titles for something which inherently has no real name. And while that's certainly true for a small number of them, many of these terms actually refer to entirely different things, and we need to briefly cover what those things are in order to understand exactly what and where the dark web actually is. This here is a pretty good diagram of the size of the internet with a couple of exceptions that I'm going to cover as we go through. This outer blue circle is the entirety of the internet. It's all of the nodes that all talk to each other, whether they're serving websites or otherwise. That inner green circle that contains the surface web and the deep web, that's our World Wide Web. That's the entire web as accessible via any standard internet browser. Now, the difference between that surface web and the deep web is that the surface web is only the portion of the web that I think the easiest way to explain it is that's indexed by search engines. It's the only part of the web that you can get to just by clicking on links in search engines. It's the part of the web that doesn't require you to, say, authenticate before you can get in. It's not behind a paywall. You don't have to, like I said, log in to access it. It's all the stuff where it's just click for free. Let's go there. It's company websites. It's things like that. That's your surface web. Then we have below that the deep web. And now a lot of people are going to see deep web, and they're going to think, oh, that's scary already. The deep web, what is that? That's not interesting. The deep web, simply the portions of the web that are accessible through a browser, still through a standard browser, but not indexed by Google. That's everything that's behind those walls. That's everything, that is on Facebook, and you have to log into Facebook to view it. That's everything that's, say, behind the Wall Street Journal's paywall. Google can't access it, and you have to pay to access it. Anything that you have to do something before you're allowed to view it, that's the deep web. Most of the time we're on the internet, we're probably on the deep web, and we didn't even know it. But that's why it's called deep web versus surface web. You'll notice then at the bottom, we have a couple of overlaps into the internet and into the deep web, a pseudo Venn diagram going on there. We have a dark net. Now the dark net, just like the deep web, that dark net is other network services that might be that you have to do something to access. Generally, services that need to be authenticated against. Those networks include VPNs. We're all familiar with VPNs now. VPNs, you have to authenticate, you have to connect to a certain system in order to be allowed into that network. That network, while it can be on the internet, often is now in the day of cloud computing. You still just can't get to it just by opening your laptop and heading over there. You have to do something to get into that network. And so that's what that dark net is. And inside one of those dark nets is that dark web. So we go several circles deep into this dark web. The dark web is part of the deep web in that search engines can't index it, and it's part of a dark net in that you can't just open any old browser and just head on in. It uses custom communication protocols, and we're going to talk about this in just a second, to give you an idea of how massive these realms are. That surface web, those corporate websites, the websites where it's just free to view without you doing anything, that's only about 4% of all of the web contents that's on the internet. The deep web and everything that's inside those dark nets makes up the other 96%, with an estimated, a pretty good estimate, I'll say, of 48% of all web content being inside the dark web. So half of the web is in the dark web, and it's not even easy for us to access. The deep web, it's estimated it stores about the deep web, including the dark web, it's estimated it stores about 7,500 terabytes of data, whereas the surface web, only about 19 terabytes. That 19 terabytes is equivalent to about 980 million websites just on the surface web. So that gives you an idea of how much web content must be in this deep web and must really, really be in this dark web here. So now I'm going to walk you through how a lot of folks like to tell you need to do to access the dark web, this scary, complex, definitely illegal set of steps. First off, they say Get yourself a device that can't be traced to you. Make sure you're using a laptop that isn't yours, was never yours, can't be traced to you. Probably go and steal one. Grab one out of a cafe. This Cafe Thief, this is actually a project that I've been running for a few years when the pandemic was less of a thing, where I had nice little business cards with security awareness information on them that I would place on people's phones and laptops that they would just leave in Starbucks while they would use the restroom or go up to get another coffee. These people just leave these corporate laptops unlocked, easy to snatch and grab all the time. And so I started printing little security awareness cards. Not relevant here, relevant to the fact that it's super, super easy to steal yourself a laptop and never get caught. Then, once you've stolen a laptop, crack someone else's Wi-Fi network. Get onto someone else's network so that anything that you're doing can never be attributed to you, even if they're looking at the network traffic. It's going to go under someone else's name entirely. And then, even after you've done that, they say, hey, go make sure you're using a private VPN software. That's critical, and getting that extra layer of protection to make sure definitely no one's ever going to know it's you. And then once you've done all that, they say you have to use this Tor browser. This is a specific browser that speaks the protocol that the dark web uses, the onion router protocol. And so they say you got to use Tor router if you want to get to the dark web. This is not true. You don't actually, and you should never do the majority of this. Definitely not the top two things. It's absolutely not necessary. It's a lot of scare tactics. Anyone who's telling you to do these things is either actually a legitimate criminal or has no idea what's actually going on in the dark web and is just trying to look cool. You can actually use the Brave browser. In fact, Brave, newer browser, just came out a little while ago. It's based off of the Chrome source code, the Chrome browser code. So it's exactly like Chrome. It uses all of Chrome's plugins. If you're familiar with using Chrome, you can start using this immediately and have zero learning curve. But it also incorporates tons of cutting edge technologies like cryptocurrency wallets, and it supports this onion router protocol that the dark web that we're going to access uses. So instead of having to go and use, I'm going to back up a little bit here, instead of having to go and use this Tor browser, which you certainly can, you can just use Brave as your daily driver for everything. A cool thing about Brave is if you are accessing a website that has an anonymous dark web clone of itself, it'll automatically pop open a private Tor window for you to access that website in, and that's really neat. Let's talk a little bit about this Tor protocol I keep referencing. If you're interested in online privacy and anonymity, you've probably heard of Tor. To many, Tor is the basis of true freedom on the internet. But what is it exactly? How does it work? Why should you use it? The Tor browser is one of the most important tools to guarantee anonymous and free browsing on the internet. And of course, the dark web. It does both. Tor gives you access to that dark part of the internet, but you shouldn't try to access it without knowing exactly what you're getting yourself into, and that's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, make sure to check your security settings for whatever browser you're using to access Tor to make sure that you're going to be able to do that safely. Make sure that it's set. Generally, the default settings are fine. The Tor browser has some super hardcore stuff you can turn on. If you like, you can use that to get super nuts about it. Even though this might be quite obvious to many, it's also important to never visit websites or click on links that you don't trust. Of course, it's something you should keep in mind regardless of the browser you're using. And lastly, we recommend you use a good secure VPN or a virtual private network, as we mentioned earlier. Using a VPN at the same time as the Tor protocol ensures that your data is encrypted beyond what Tor provides. And moreover, the VPN also hides your personal IP address by displaying the IP address of the VPN server that you're using rather than your real, perhaps home IP address. You can use one of the many cheap anonymous VPN providers you've no doubt seen ads for all over the internet. That adds another layer of anonymity to everything, pending they are, in fact, truly anonymous like they claim. I can attest for private internet access personally. I can't attest for anyone else. This is important because you're trying to keep yourself safe from a lot of the bad stuff that can be on the dark web as well. So you're not necessarily trying to hide what you're up to from people, which certainly, go ahead, you should be. You're trying to hide yourself from the people who might seek to do you harm as well. Remember that privacy doesn't necessarily equal security. Tor can't guarantee you'll be safe from cyber attacks and cyber criminals while using the browser. But if you apply the principles we all know about, don't click on stuff that you're not sure about, don't download things and install them if you're not sure about them, and use that private private VPN like this, that's going to get you a long step of the way to not having you be attacked and not have your browser being compromised, so that you can still safely kind of surf around in this realm. Regardless of which browser you use, always make sure you download the most recent version. They all have limitations. Security holes get found all the time. But these browsers developers are more than aware of these things, and they're constantly working to improve their software to make sure that it's safer for you to use. So always check to make sure you've got the latest version of everything you're using before you start diving into the dark web. So skip forward here now. Though Tor's developers originally created this protocol for military purposes, it's developed into a tool that can be useful to all, especially for those who have something to hide or will otherwise benefit from the online anonymity. Many political activists use it to avoid being prosecuted in their country. Usually these people live in countries where authorities might punish them for their thoughts and views or things that they say or wish to share online. Similarly, journalists use Tor to protect their sources. If a source doesn't want to risk being revealed, they can communicate sensitive information through various means and various onion websites that we'll talk about later through this browser. And not just suppliers of this information, but also consumers are to be found on Tor. Many people use it to access geographically restricted content and to bypass censorship and visit specific websites. After all, a lot of pages, such as those on the dark web, can't even be accessed by a normal browser, so you have to use something that supports this Tor protocol, like the Tor browser or, as I mentioned, Brave. Another well-known group of people who use Tor are whistleblowers. For instance, one of Tor's most notable users and supporters is Edward Snowden, who revealed the documents on classified surveillance programs in the US. We all remember that. And while all of this might seem very positive, not everyone who uses the Tor protocol for what not everyone uses it for what one might call a noble cause. For instance, as I'm sure all of you have guessed, hackers and cyber criminals use it to stay anonymous while conducting their illegal business. The anonymous browser is especially useful to criminals because it provides access to the dark web. This dark part of the internet contains multiple illegal marketplaces that we will talk about later, such as the former Silk Road you may have heard about in the news long ago. I'm sure this is a primary topic you're all concerned with, and like I said, we're going to cover those later, don't worry. But for the average internet user, the anonymity Tor offers isn't really enough of an incentive to start using that network as a daily driver. This is mostly because the encryption makes your connection significantly slower. And besides, as we mentioned previously, carrying out online surveillance costs time and money, which means the governments can't and like don't even want to spy on every single one of us. The government's focusing on spying on people who are conducting specific suspicious behavior or specific individuals they've identified for other reasons. They're not watching everybody because just the sheer cost of that alone is absolutely insane. So that's why, like most people who spend their time online just watching cat videos and fighting with strangers on Facebook probably aren't going to gain enough benefits from using Tor, and you're better off just using a standard driver or a standard browser for your day-to-day activities. So let's talk about how this all works. The team behind Tor, which is short for the Onion Router, and you're going to find out why it's called the Onion Router in just a minute. The team behind Tor provides free, open source software that helps you browse the internet anonymously. Originally, the Tor network was developed with the help of the US Navy. The network was developed to enable the US Navy and other military organizations to communicate anonymously online. And these days, Tor mainly focuses attention on making its browser safer and faster, and the development of a few other privacy tools that they handle. So as we mentioned before, the Tor protocol greatly benefits your online privacy and, up to a point, your security. The browser makes use of the vast worldwide server network that the Tor network consists of, and we're seeing just a little microcosm of it here. When you're using the browser, any browser that supports this Tor protocol, your data goes through the different Tor routers, also called Tor nodes. That's what all of these are here. These are run by random individuals around the internet who choose to host these nodes themselves for free, and you too can even host one. The Tor protocol encrypts and routes your traffic as soon as you request a website by randomly selecting which of these nodes it's going to pass the traffic through. It exchanges a separate set of encryption keys with each node, and then finally, it encrypts the message, the request it's going to send with all of those keys and sends it down the line. The traffic is heavily encrypted and slowly decoded one layer at a time as it hits the different nodes, and I'm going to cover that in more depth in just a little bit. Once that's all done, the response from the remote server then does the same thing, except that it takes a totally different path back to you. This means that even if one of these nodes is compromised, has a bad person on it, has an attacker on it that's able to view the unencrypted traffic from inside that node, all they're going to see, say this guy in the center, all he's going to see is the previous node's address where the message came from and where that message is heading to. All of that request data in the middle is still encrypted with all of the keys for all of the other nodes all the way down the line, so it's totally unreadable to that person. Unless that person happens to be on the first or the last node where eventually the plain text information has to be sent either to the encrypted or to be sent to, say, Facebook to request that website. And in fact, even if they are on one of those nodes, they're never going to see the reply to that request because, like I said, it's going to take a totally different path to get back to you. So even if they hit the lotto, they're able to grab one of your requests and they're even able to read the message. All they're going to see in there is whatever was in that one little tiny bloop of a packet that got sent that one time. They're not going to be able to correlate anything because without completely compromising every single router on the entirety of the Tor network, you can't assemble any one person's traffic patterns. And in fact, even if you could compromise all this, you'd still have to get all that data and somehow be able to correlate it all and match it all back together. And I can't imagine the amount of time that might take. Now, I did gloss over the encryption mechanism earlier, but that's because I wanted to explain it a little more in depth here. This diagram is an example of a message, say a request to get facebook.com, sent from your Tor browser, and it's going to pass through 3 Tor routers that we've called router A, router B, router C. As I mentioned, your browser generates a unique set of encryption keys for each one of these routers, and then encrypts your message over and over and over again using each key in sequence, wrapping the message in layers like an onion. When your message then gets to router A decrypts that first layer because it has the keys for only that first layer, and it gets down to layer B, which only has the plain text of where to send the message next. So it goes, okay, and it sends the message to the next node that you had chosen to pass your message through. So it goes on to router B. Router B then does the same thing. It peels off that next layer. Router B only knows that the message is supposed to go over to router C. It still can't read the message because it's still encrypted with router C's key, and it only has router B's key. And then router C finally is able to decrypt that message, read it, see this that you want to go get facebook.com, look at facebook.com. It says, okay, router C goes and makes the request to facebook.com for you and sends whatever facebook.com sends, the homepage for facebook.com back to your browser by once again choosing a random path through the entire Tor network, making a bunch of key exchanges, encrypting, and firing it all the way back down the line where then it gets peeled away, and finally delivered back to your browser. I realize this is a lot to take in. It can be hard for some to visualize what's going on here without perhaps seeing it in an animated form or something like that. But really, it's not extremely important. All you need to know is the Tor protocol makes it nearly impossible for anyone to know who you are and what you're up to, at least as far as interception of communication between you and whatever server you're talking to goes on the fly. Now that we maybe sort of understand all of that, and we have everything we need to begin this dangerous journey, which is really just, say, our Brave browser, or the Tor browser, if you so choose, there's one extremely important thing we need to keep in mind as we begin this. Surfing the dark web is not illegal. The use of Tor itself is completely legal in most jurisdictions, especially in the Western world, definitely in the United States. A lot of people think like, oh, just if I access the dark web, the feds are going to bust down my door and I have to hide from the feds because it's all illegal. And that's absolutely not the case whatsoever. No part of that is the case. And we're going to see why in just a second. However, as we mentioned, some people do use it for illegal activities because the anonymity the software helps users achieve. Using Tor to do illegal things does not make those illegal things less illegal. So I want to strongly advise that you refrain from doing anything illegal because Tor is not going to protect you from the law when you get caught. Okay, so where do we start then? Darksearch.io is one of the better dark web search engines out there. In fact, you can use it on the clear web as well in whatever browser you happen to be using. But there are many search engines out there for the dark web with varying degrees of accuracy, strengths, weaknesses, and your best bet for getting started may just be to throw down like a DuckDuckGo search for dark website for and whatever you're looking for, or even just look up some like good listicles of cool dark websites to visit. I posted a link here for a really good list of sites to get you started. There is some really cool stuff out there that is not criminal in any way. Once you get going, you're going to notice that you'll actually find many major websites, especially major media outlets, have these Tor sites, these onion sites that you can visit. They do this to allow a means for those who are stuck in, like I said, countries with oppressive regimes to still communicate and get access to information from the outside world. Facebook does it because we all know that Facebook needs to make sure that every last person on Earth can access and use Facebook. That's pivotal to their core business plan. The New York Times, BBC, for obvious reasons, so that people in repressive regimes can get real news about what's actually going on out there. Tons of EU businesses have dark websites. It's just kind of become a cultural thing there, which is really cool. There's lots of Scandinavian political parties that are very heavily into privacy. You know, the Pirate Party is one of them that's become relatively famous. Lots of personal blogs for people who just want to be able to post their thoughts without having it, you know, be traced back to them. Secure Drop Zero Bin Proton Mail. That's like a Dropbox that's anonymous. Zero Bin is like Paste Bin, but totally anonymous. Proton Mail is anonymous email. Pretty much all dark web communication happens across Proton Mail or something like that, especially in the marketplaces, especially when you're making deals where conversations have to happen. And then plenty of discussion forums. Lots of folks just like to not be tracked online, and this is a great way of making sure that that absolutely won't happen whatsoever. And it's not because they're up to something illegal, it's just because it makes them feel better. They just don't want it to happen. Just make sure it doesn't happen. You've got all of these discussion forums for pretty much anything you can think of. Hidden Answers is real cool. Hidden Answers is, it's kind of like Reddit. It's on the dark web. Be aware a lot of these forums don't have any particular rules about what you can and can't post, so heads up. One of my absolute favorite things that has ever come out of the dark web is CICADA 3301. This is a nickname given to an alleged enigmatic organization that posted 3 sets of puzzles online between 2012 and 2014 to recruit code breakers from the public. The first internet puzzle started on January 4th, 2012 on 4chan. And it had lots and lots and lots of dark web related things that you had to go and interact with and figure out and find in order to complete the puzzle. It ran for nearly a month. Then the second round began an entire year later, on January 4th, 2013. And then a third round following the confirmation of a fresh clue posted on Twitter on January 4th, 2014. This may sound like I'm referencing, ancient history, except the third round is still going. It hasn't been solved, and there still are people actively working on it. The stated intent was to recruit intelligent individuals by presenting a series of puzzles, which would be solved. No new puzzles have been published. However, a new clue was posted on January 5th of 2016, and nothing new has come from them since. However, the puzzle is still up. It does involve surfing the entirety of the internet, including the dark web, finding clues, solving puzzles. The puzzles focused heavily on data security, cryptography, steganography, internet anonymity. A really freaking cool brain buster for sure that requires the use of the Tor network to interact with. It's been called the most elaborate and mysterious puzzle of the internet age. It's listed as one of the top 5 most unsolved mysteries of the internet by the Washington Post. Many have speculated that the puzzles are a recruitment tool for the NSA or the CIA or MI6 or a Masonic conspiracy or a cyber mercenary group. The stated purpose of the puzzles each year was to recruit, like I said, intelligent individuals, although the ultimate purpose remains unknown. According to statements of several people who won the 2012 puzzle, 3301 then uses non-puzzle based recruiting methods, but created the CICADA puzzles because they were looking for potential members with cryptography and computer security skills. Many of the descriptions of what happened after the puzzle was solved fit very cult-like. But either way, you don't have to do any of that. It's a super cool puzzle some folks made that heavily leverage the dark web. It's still up there. You can still do it. The first 2 challenges are also there if you want to try to go through them. So like with all these cool things we have going on here, we've got all of these perfectly legal, totally great websites that we can visit. We've got fun puzzles that we can solve. Why don't we all hang out here? It's because, like I said, the dark web is often slow. Unreliable search engines. The results are unreliable because a lot of the websites disappear, get taken down, often because the person running them just doesn't feel like doing it anymore, or they had to move, or like their registration expired and they didn't properly renew it and now they had to get a new onion address, but the search engines didn't update the address and so it points you to the wrong place. Scams, everything's a scam. Anyone trying to sell you anything is scamming you. Malware all over the place, again, because there's no rules. Even on these like perfectly nice forums, a lot of folks are like, hey, look, this is the dark web and we're all here because we want a more free and anonymous internet, so do whatever you want. Tons of malware, tons and tons of malware. We're going to talk about that in a bit. There's a high risk of seeing things that you didn't want to see. And the marketplaces are difficult to use. And again, they're mostly scams because surprise, surprise, you're dealing with criminals and they don't really have to be nice to you. Speaking of marketplaces, this list I have here is a majority of the known dark web marketplaces along with the dates that they were active and shut down. I know it's really tiny. Don't really worry about it. It's not important. When we hear the dark web mentioned somewhere, most of the time it's in the context of marketplaces and the purchasing of illegal goods. This is absolutely a massive aspect of the dark web for sure, but accessing these markets is not without its own challenges, not the least of which is actually finding one that is still functioning. At any given time, there's like maybe 12 that are up at best, and because they kind of go up and down all the time, they don't have a lot of stuff listed on them, so it's not like great to begin with. It's not like Amazon or eBay. Some of these markets were shut down through joint government operations. Some were simply shut down by the teams who ran them. Because these marketplaces often offered escrow services for guaranteeing payment and product delivery, those shutdowns in the middle of the night often meant that any money users still had in that escrow was just immediately lost. In fact, sometimes these markets go down for that purpose, and the owners just take all that money that they stole and they split it up. That's known as an exit scam. Anything yellow, any of the yellow dots you see here, which is the vast majority of them, were exit scams. That's where they built up a huge market to build up enough in escrow that they could just shut it down and leave. And what are you going to do? Take them to court? Marketplaces average a lifetime of only about 8 months, with the most enduring lasting up to about 4 years, though that's extremely rare. Nearly all of the very largest marketplaces were gone within 2 years tops. Anyway, at this point, I'm sure you're saying, okay, great, whatever. What's in those marketplaces? Are all the things that I hear about them actually true? And I don't know what you've personally heard, but I can guarantee that whatever you heard, the answer is yes, because literally everything in there is in there. And that does heavily go back to my further point of there's things in there that you didn't want to see and that you didn't know you were going to see, and they're going to be sprung on you. And I just don't recommend sticking your eyeballs in there to begin with. 67% of the listings are for illegal physical contraband of various types. Fraud and counterfeit listings were the next major category, accounting for about 17% of marketplaces. That's fraud. That's identity theft, things like that. Things for committing fraud in various forms. It's probably because of the fact that people give their personal information out so readily. Geez, who has not gone this pandemic without being asked at least 4 times to text some organization a photograph of your ID? It's probably ending up on the dark web, even if you trust that organization. Dark web's a totally anonymous environment in which people can engage in illicit behavior without a high risk of being caught. Empire is currently one of the largest darknet marketplaces. It's got about 6,000 products listed on there. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero are the most common currencies. Bitcoin and Litecoin because they are the most held coins, the most diversely held coin amongst people because they were the first effectively. Monero then came along because Monero actually actively sought out to fix the anonymity flaws that both Bitcoin and Litecoin have. And then everyone just pretty much limited it there. Instead of supporting every last cryptocurrency under the sun, they said, look, just go get one of these 3 and then come back here. The growth of anonymizing networks like Tor, like private VPNs, has emboldened more people to go exploring and look at these dark web markets. And then that's actually caused a huge price rise in the stuff that's listed on these dark web marketplaces. More than that, let's see. Dark web stats for 2021 show that Tor's secured browsing technology is the largest anonymizing network, with over 2 million active users connecting directly to its service. So generally, when you hear the dark web, you're going to hear that in relation to Tor, or even have those 2 things used in conjunction or vice versa, or flip-flopped with each other. More than that, the bandwidth capacity of this network reaches over 300 gigabits per second. And this initiative that indicates a massive growth, especially when compared to its 50 gigabits a second capacity just back in 2014. But yeah, hilarious side effect of so many people figuring out how to access these dark web markets is that those sellers realize these folks think that you can't buy a lot of the stuff they're selling over on the clear web, on the surface web. So they jack those prices way up. With modern advances, anonymity, and the ease of leveraging stolen servers to host your websites, the clear web, the regular web, has regained a ton of ground when it comes to the sale of illicit goods and services. So you don't really need to go to the dark web to find a lot of that stuff. However, most folks never think to go looking there, or think it's just not safe, or they assume it's a scam. So they'll come to the dark web and just blindly trust the information that they find here. So let's dive in. Over the next few slides, I'm going to really quickly cover some of the more common things you can find on the dark web. Here we've got prescription medication. You can definitely buy prescription medication. Like I said, things to keep in mind every time I show a slide here, probably a scam. Why would you buy prescription medication from a stranger on the dark web and put this in your body? That seems like just the absolute worst idea I can possibly think of, when there's no guarantee and there's no legal recourse. And when you're eventually poisoned, you can't even go to the hospital and say, this is what I took, because you don't know what's actually in there. It's a nightmare. Just don't do this. Tons of counterfeit fashion items. Some of these are sold as counterfeit, where they say, hey, these are counterfeit. And the idea is you buy those and then you sell those and tell people they're real and make a lot of money. A lot of these, they don't say they're counterfeit. They try to tell you they're real. All of this is counterfeit. Nobody who has real any of this needs to sell it on the dark web. They could put it on eBay. Nobody can track Yeezys and Chanel purses. There's no tags and serial numbers on these. Just put it on eBay if you stole it. There's no need to go to the dark web. This is all fake. We've got, these are cool, verifiable degrees from accredited schools. These are degrees, faked degrees from accredited schools, and you won't just get degrees, you'll get transcripts, you'll get letters of recommendation from professors, and the schools can be verified as accredited, and they'll have a phone number and email addresses that your employer or whoever can call to verify that you did in fact attend this school and the information that you have is legitimate. That's terrifying. The degree is about $380 here. This pricing's a little bit old. For a full kit of degree, transcripts, letter, all that, $2,000. Way cheaper than going to college. You can absolutely buy a new identity. You can buy a full passport, ID, everything that you need here, depending on the quality of it and the authenticity of it. Like a stolen passport goes for an insane amount of money because it's great, especially if you look like the person whose picture is in that passport. Now you're Dutch. Always wanted to be Dutch. Only cost me $3,300. What a deal. But you can get entirely full kits that are literally, you show up in any city and you have every piece of ID that you need to be ready to go. You've got a birth certificate, you have an ID, you have a passport, you're all set. Those can approach $10,000, but new identity. And again, you don't know if you're gonna get a real one or not. Scams aplenty, don't do it. My favorite things, the other category, pound of sand, a pet brick. Are these code names for something else? No, they're not. This was actually somebody selling a pound of sand. I read one of the reviews that was like, I received a pound of sand. Can confirm. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't a pound of sand, and that's what I got. So 10 out of 10, good sand. People are just going to list stuff on there for funsies and see who buys it. And there's a lot of stuff like that. These things are not code names for something else. You're going to get a brick in the mail. Maybe don't buy it. Radioactive elements. Uranium, radium. Why would you want this? Who knows? What are you doing in your garage? Maybe something that needs radium-226. This was a great story where a woman had bought some radium-226 off of the dark web. It's 2.7 million times more radioactive than natural uranium. She had purchased it to treat her own lung cancer by building it into a little necklace that she just wore over her chest and got horrible everything cancer and eventually died from that because she bought this little chunk of radium. I'm not sure why anyone would do that. I suspect it comes from hearing that radiation is used to treat cancer. Cancer treatments are way more than most people can afford. I'll go buy my own radiation. It's going to be fine. Don't do it. User accounts from all sorts of applications and breaches are found here. We know that. This is, if any kind of subscription service, you can just read these here. Look at the prices on these. 100 Netflix accounts up there. A lifetime guarantee on them. $10. Not bad. We've all heard about how hackers have breached various companies, or various companies' user information has been found for sale on the dark web. That all happens here for sure. That often happens on the forums more often than on the marketplaces, but you can find them in either way, either place. Depending on what the user accounts were for, you can often find them in something like this. If, like, say Netflix got breached, people will sell them in the marketplace like this. Remember, let's see, back in April 2020, 500,000 Zoom accounts were hacked and all that data was sold. Some of those records, those user records, were selling at less than 1 penny each for user, name, password, any account information associated with that. Others of them were just being given away for free as like you know, a good faith effort. Like, here, I'll give you this for free, and then maybe you'll come buy some of my other stuff that I have. All of that is here. The more that it has, if it has home addresses, if it has email addresses and passwords associated with them, full names, things like that, that pushes the price up, but not by much. Like a full kit like that has everything about a person, 7 cents. It's not worth that much because there's so much of it out there. And it's rare that you have anything new, given all the breaches that occur. More importantly, exploits, O-days. This is where they turn up. This is where they get sold. Often, again, on the hacker forums, sometime on the marketplaces. This person is selling custom exploits for various browsers. He compiles them in different ways each time so that antivirus software can't identify it because it's a different package each time it's exploited or executed. So that's why you get 3 copies, because you're going to burn 3 of them and then you're going to come back and buy 3 more. I love this one over here. Somebody's got an exploit to get free Subway, likely some kind of website attack. Very fun. Free lunch, free dinner every day at Subway. But yeah, this is absolutely, there's no end of malware being sold on the dark web, and malware that it borders on impossible to defend against, no matter what you've got installed on your system. And that's why we keep coming back to don't click on stuff, don't install stuff. You know, don't rely on your system's ability to protect against things like this that are being custom handmade to intentionally get around those things. The best defense, unfortunately, is the person behind the keyboard. That's you. You have to be vigilant. No matter how secure of anything that you're using is, it's not as good as you paying attention. Password stealers, remote access tools. A password stealer costs around $10. It's used to steal all the passwords. Key loggers, literally record every key you type. It's real easy to tell when somebody's typing in a password on their keyboard when you just see the full string of everything they've typed out. There's no end of RATs, or remote access tools. They allow access to your computer, microphone, and webcam, often without you being alerted that they're doing that. Those tools are commonly used to capture video of victims, which is later either directly sold, depending on what the victim was in the middle of doing when the recording happened, or sometimes they're held for ransom, like very Black Mirror style, if you get what I'm saying. It's a great reminder to go get yourself a webcam cover. This is a great one. I've chosen these screenshots because while they are in fact for the sale of malicious code, for ransomware, for botnets, for distributed denial of service attack tools, this is all malicious code that is free. This is all stuff you can just go on the clear web and get and run yourself for free. But like I said, the dark web knows lots of people are coming in looking for sketchy stuff and willing to spend a lot of money. So they go, all right, I'll take your money. Here, I got this thing. You want to pay for it? That's our agreement. Off you go. But in all seriousness, botnets and ransomware are pretty much go hand in hand these days. And they're easily the #1 pieces of malicious software sold on the dark web. The competition between sellers has gotten so intense that many of them now even offer telephone tech support for setup and troubleshooting of that ransomware. You got to wonder how they can handle something like that, which definitely takes more than one person in a basement, right? Well, the people distributing ransomware and collecting the revenue are almost never 1 or 2 scary criminals in some far off country. They're usually members of a complex, well-managed criminal group. The organized crime groups that have operated all over the world for centuries have not disappeared. They've just adapted to this digital age, and they're committing all of their crime on the internet. Instead of, charging insurance to liquor stores, they're distributing ransomware on the internet. They're realizing people are now leaving their digital homes open on the internet for everyone to pilfer. These organizations have added divisions which focus solely on cybercrime. In fact, some of these organizations have gone so far as to create B2B or business-to-business offerings in the way of what's called ransomware as a service. These offerings set up all the infrastructure an attacker needs in order to manage their ransomware attacks, in order to manage all of the victims that they've infected. It handles the encryption keys. It handles the payment gateways. It even has a tracking system, so you can keep track of the hundreds and thousands of systems a single ransomware campaign might compromise. Given this, all an attacker now has to do is get a foot in the door. All they have to do is get you to click on something that runs a little tiny piece of code that just makes a little connection out to the internet. And then they just, usually by way of a phishing email, we're all told day in, day out, look out for phishing, don't click stuff, that everyone's trying to target you. It is absolutely true. It is beyond true. That is the most common method of attack, and it is focused on everyone, especially members of any kind of company. Any corporate email is absolutely being targeted with ransomware every single day, because all they need to do is get into one computer. Doesn't matter how low of a person you are in any organization. If they can get into a computer that is connected to that company's network, they may have purchased, what's called a zero-day exploit, an exploit that the security software companies aren't aware of yet and thus don't protect against. And now they can spider this communication, this ransomware out to the entire company just because you clicked on something because you thought it doesn't really matter, because I don't do anything important at this company anyway. So it doesn't matter if I get infected, it's fine. It's not fine. It's not at all fine. That's almost always how they get in. So now all they have to do is just get someone to get their foot in the door that way. Then they direct that system to talk to their new fancy ransomware infrastructure that handles everything. It's point and click the entire way, very little human involvement. It has never, ever been easier to hold a company ransom. And if all that seems like too much work, you could just hire someone else to do it for you. Absolutely, there are hackers for hire on the internet willing to do any dirty thing for the right amount of money. Generally, you tell them what you want done. They do a little bit of recon, let you know if they can do it or not. If they can do it, you set up some money exchange, and off they go. Sometimes, if they're not scamming you, a lot of time, they're just going to take your money and leave, so don't do it. And scams aplenty. Lots of the marketplaces have means of reporting scams, but if you've been scammed, it's too late. You're out of luck. The scams don't end. Since these are anonymous marketplaces where neither party has any legal recourse due to the illegality of what they're doing, scamming rarely comes with the downside. A lot of marketplaces do have some systems in place to try to prevent this, such as escrow and literally Amazon-style user ratings and product ratings. But you never know when you're going to be dealing with someone who's on their way out and just wants to steal a bunch of money before they're going to burn their account. Heck, as we mentioned before, you never know when the entire marketplace you're using is going to just up and leave with everyone's escrow money. So don't ever buy anything on the dark web. It's very easy to not buy things on the dark web. You're doing it right now. Keep doing that. And finally, the feds. The feds of every country are all over this place. There's a great chance that whoever you're talking to, especially in the marketplaces, is a law enforcement officer of some sort. They do this thing for a living. They sit on the dark web all day. They know the lingo. They know how to look sketchy enough for you to believe them. Sometimes they'll even send you what you did buy. And then a day later, they show up at your door while you're holding it. Every first world country on earth has perpetual sting operations running on every marketplace here. And they're not just trying to take the marketplaces down. They're trying to take down the people who buy and sell on those marketplaces because they know those people will just go to the next marketplace. It's not worth the risk. It might be fun to surf around a little bit, but under no circumstances should you ever buy or sell anything. I wouldn't even risk the legal stuff. Don't put your pet bricks on here. Just don't. It's just not worth it. I promise you. So that's all I have for today. I hope that was insightful. I hope it pointed you in the right direction. Hope it was educational. Be sure to check out our company at grim.rip in case you'd like to bring in some of the country's best experts in many security fields to train your teams. We also offer extended range of security assessments and engineering, like I mentioned, for both information and operational technologies. We're one of the only security engineering firms that offers training and engineering for operational technology in the US. I've been Johnny Xmas. Thanks so much for having me. I'll hand it over now for some Q&A if we've got any time left.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny. Very, very insightful. Appreciate you taking time to walk through, all the inner dark web and helping, sort of demystify this unique topic for our Kraft Heinz team. So, of course, we do have a few questions that have come in throughout the event. So we'll start first with just kind of, just on the basics. Can a dark web site not end in .onion?
No. For it to be a dark website, it has to end in .onion, because .onion is, without getting into great technical detail, that's kind of that's kind of like the .com of the dark web. It tells the browser you're using to go talk to the dark web domain name systems to find the address of what you're looking for and how to get there. And it's not the same as the internet, where it's just IP addresses and registries like that. It gets much more complex. And so it needs to end in that .onion for the actual browser you're using to understand where to ask for how to get to that. You will have sites, like I mentioned, like the search engine from earlier that ends in .io. That's because that's just its clear web version. It still results in dark web links when you search on it. It's just easier to say than an onion site, which is often a very long string of random characters and a .onion. So I just put that there for ease of use. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And I think on the topic of the onion routing, Daniel is joining us from Sao Paulo, Brazil. He says,
Nice.
Thank you for the workshop. Does the concept of onion routing work in a similar way as torrent downloading?
No. Torrent downloading is set up in such a way where everyone has the thing that you're asking for, and all of them send little bits of that thing to you until you have all of those little bits and then have your own copy of it. Onion routing is just routing. The end place that you're going to, there's still only one server that has the thing you need. The routing handles how your request of that thing goes through the darknets and how it gets back to you. It's just the part in the middle. The onion routing has nothing to do with the thing you're trying to get your hands on.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Johnny, so here at Kraft Heinz, our default internet browser is Microsoft Edge. However, one of our employees is asking, maybe I guess in the lens of, personal devices outside of work, which operating system is the safest to use when browsing the dark web?
Which operating system or which browser?
OS and maybe internet browser.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll answer both. Edge, Chrome, Brave, and a few others all actually now share the same code base. That's really cool because it has gone a long, long way towards enhancing the security of Edge. And so Edge is now actually not bad of a browser at all because it's using that Chrome base, and the Chrome code base has a lot of people working to make sure that it's very secure. It pays people. It pays bug bounty hunters to tell them when they found something that's insecure so they could fix it before the criminals find it. So pretty much all of the major browsers are extremely similar in security now. Firefox and Chrome compete in their code bases. They're two very different browsers. However, there has not been a significant number of attacks in the wild more than any other browser. So whatever you want to use, you're generally fine as far as the browsers go. As far as operating systems go, the same old thing that has always been in place still applies, with the security through obscurity being a thing. Windows, because so many companies run Windows and thus companies are juicy targets, most attackers and malicious code writers are targeting Windows because that's going to give them the greatest rate of return. Sure, they could target Mac, but they're not, because generally, in most cases, Macs are being used by individuals. You know, targeting someone like me, the most you could ever get out of me is the amount of money I have in my bank account, which compared to literally any corporation is nothing. And so people are not targeting Mac as much. That being said, Apple does the same thing with its bug bounties, where it pays people to let them know when something is found that's insecure. Apple fixes them extremely quickly. Apple has an intense internal security team that helps keep its stuff secure. Macs used to be secure because they couldn't do much either, and so there wasn't much of an attack surface. But as Macs have come a long way in their ability to do all the same things Windows can, that opens up more holes inside of them. And so while certainly Windows far and away is the operating system that gets attacked and exploited and compromised the most, it's not necessarily because it's the least secure. It's just the one that's also being targeted the most. And I'm positive that all these people who are writing malicious code to attack Windows decided to up and just hate on Apple or hate on Linux. They would absolutely find some really juicy holes, and you would see, you know, security vulnerabilities for Apple or Linux go through the roof. I can tell you, we here at Grim, we do a lot of vulnerability research on the Linux side. We are responsible for many patches to the Linux kernel itself, to the core software that runs Linux, the thing that you have to run to call something Linux. And a lot of these things we find are years and years and years old, and some of them are really easy to exploit, and it's just no one went looking there. So no one tried it. The second someone went looking there, we said, hey, look, whoa, this is bad. You can't do this. And we fixed it right away. But it's hard. I don't like to use, you know, phrases like, oh, this operating system is more secure than that one. It's just a victim of how many people are trying to beat it up. And so, yeah, the most people are attempting to hit Windows, with Mac being the definite second, and Linux kind of being further in the background. That being said, you know, even Microsoft has done an amazing job at making Windows itself as like the core operating system really secure. When you see Windows being exploited in corporate environments, it's almost never somebody actually exploiting a security vulnerability in the code of Windows. It's somebody exploiting overworked systems administrators who kind of left some corners cut, some bad configurations, some insecure configurations, a bad way of allowing machines to talk in a certain way. That's usually what's happening when you see exploits against Windows. It's not that is Windows a Swiss cheese, it's full of holes. It's that the immense amount of things that we expect Windows to do in an enterprise environment means that there's more potential for something to not get set up properly. Sysadmins have one of the hardest jobs on earth in 2021. Everything that they do is being put under a microscope by every single hacker that gets a foothold inside an organization. And so you really got to give it up for them, because they I don't know how they sleep at night. It's really tough.
Wonderful, thank you. And Johnny, just wanted to share a comment from an employee. They shared that they received a notice from a credit monitoring service that their email was found on the dark web. They didn't really know what that meant until today, so thank you. And I think on that note, and I think on that note, you know, just you know, any thoughts on just wrapping up here on the future of, you know, continuing to provide this type of information and awareness to the general public, and just kind of and what that looks like in the near future?
I think that the media is doing a really good job of making people aware of the security issues and privacy issues that are facing all of us. And certainly that's the hot topic. That's been the hot topic for years. As all of us intertwine our lives with the internet, and especially, during the pandemic, when more things ended up being virtual than ever before, you know, doctor visits. Finding a doctor who would do a virtual visit used to be quite literally impossible. I live in Chicago, the third largest city in the US, and I couldn't find a doctor that wouldn't say, all right, you got to come in. And now it's super easy. But because everything is becoming digitized like that, and more of our life is being stored by some third party, we're going to see those breaches happen more and more and more. And all of our information for sure has already been bought and sold on the dark web at least 5 times. And it's a testament to how useless that information is, that, you know, we all still have our identities. Credit monitoring is a great thing. If you want to pay for it, you certainly can. If you were part of a breach that some company had occur, you are owed, I think it's 2 years of free credit monitoring now. And generally, if you buy a lot of things online with your credit cards, you can ride a free credit monitoring train for like a decade. Otherwise, you can just do it yourself. You know, run your credit report once, twice a year and just look at it. It's not 1,000 pages. Look at it and look for anything that looks odd to you, and then drill down into there. There's no need to pay for credit reporting if you're going to do that manually. But this sort of stuff isn't going to stop, especially with ransomware being so prevalent and more companies making themselves available over the internet without properly securing themselves, especially SMBs like doctors' offices, dentist offices, law firms. I think that's where we're going to start to see a lot of the horrors really come from, because they're just trying to take the quick route to serve people, which is great, but the quick route is often not the secure route. Is that a good answer, or is that too much of a tangent?
Excellent. We appreciate you, Johnny, and
Cool.
We're going to hand it over to Ricardo just to share a few final comments. Over to
All
you,
right.
Rico.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. And a special thank you to Johnny. Really appreciate the insight and the research that you've done and what you give back to the security community. So thank you on behalf of Kraft Heinz. And for everyone, thank you for spending time with us. I hope you've learned something new about the dark web. It's not all super scary, but please be super cautious, and please remember this was for educational purpose only. And for those that submitted questions and we didn't have enough time to get to them, we'll work with Johnny to make sure that you have responses. And thank you again, and keep making life delicious. Thank you very much.